Welcome, everyone. My name is RJ Lynch, and this is Brain Strength. Brain Strength is a series that I'm putting together that combines a little bit of sports psychology, both conversations on different topics within sports psychology, concepts to it, and also mixes in a tad bit of application. So the brain part is the psych. The strength is I'm actually going to be doing some lifting. I'm going to be doing some exercising, different things where you might actually apply the concepts that I'm talking about. Now, the question is, who am I? Why should you listen to me? I have a master's in sports psychology from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I'm in the process of training for what is called a CMPC, or Certified Mental Performance Consultant certification. I'll get into more details about what that is, what that looks like and means later on in this video specifically. I'm also someone who's had the opportunity to work with athletes from beginners to this is the first time they've ever been in a weight room, ever done a sport, all the way up to Division I athletes, and help them achieve better performances than maybe they would have otherwise. I've also spent time working with some in the fitness and just general population for working out. On top of that, doing a lot of different research, publications, and just different work on the psychology of sport and how we can get our own brain out of the way. My company, Your Brain on Track, focuses on helping people be the best version of themselves, focus on using our strengths while improving our weaknesses, and just getting our head out of our way and getting it back on track. In today's episode of Brain Strength, I'll be doing two different things. For my strength portion, I'll be doing a snatch warm-up to kind of work up to some okay singles. And then the brain portion of this, I'm going to be talking about what is sports psychology? How do I find the right person for me? Because right now, sports psychology is very much a wild west of what does it actually mean to be a professional? What does it mean to do things? And social media has just made this a whole mess of people saying they can do things. And some of them are okay. Others are just absolute dog water. And when it comes down to it, as an athlete, as a coach, as someone who's just working in the field, or someone who just is exercise, trying to figure out how to use goal setting and motivation, why would you choose a dog water professional when you could have someone who's actually competent and knows what they're doing? Especially when that dog water professional might be charging you up the rear end on prices that they really haven't earned, but think they can charge because they've done something in their life that, they have experience, right? Sometimes that's BS. So we're going to talk about today how to get through it and how to find what's right for you. So the first question is, what is sports psychology and how is it different from general psychology? Well, sports psychology is a component of psychology that's very dedicated to performance. And though it's called sports psychology, the professionals within it are also very adept to the idea of performance. So actors, business leaders, things like that. So the idea is, how do we use psychology and how do we use our brain to do our best performance? Now, in that, there are some things that we directly attack and go after, like a sports anxiety. Stress is related to our performance in sport. But most of us within this field, unless we have other qualifications, aren't necessarily your mental health practitioners. So I think that's the first place we like to start, is what is a mental health practitioner and why are sports psychologists not always them, though there are some that do hold both qualifications. Well, a mental health practitioner is usually someone who has taken courses specifically related to clinical or counseling psychology. So that's your counselors, your clinical psychologists, people who have done in-depth research, in-depth school working, and have passed certain certification exams to be qualified as a mental health clinician or counselor. Now, psychologists, whether it's a sports psychologist or general psychologist, are very defined by the fact that they have to have a doctorate. Now, that doctorate can cover different things. So a clinical psychologist has a doctorate in clinical psychology. A sports psychologist has a doctorate usually in sports psychology. That's just how you have to define psychologists in the US, at least. Europe, it's a little bit more lax on the fact that you can be a master's level psychologist. That does not exist in the US. In the US, you have to be doctoral to be a psychologist. And now at that level, when you are a psychologist, you've put in between your undergrad 4 years, master's probably another 2, doctorate another 4 to 6. So you've probably done 10, 12 years of just studying the field, working in the field in your different internships, your different experiences. And doing this has given you a lot of competency to preach what you're teaching. Now, just like in any other field, there's people with these high levels of education that are nothing more than educated idiots. They have all this education, they just still talk out their ass. But in theory, they should be the most regulated. So what they're saying is usually under the most amount of scrutiny. And hopefully they're also the most competent at what they do because they've taken 10 to 12 years to study, right? So now before I get into helping you decide what's right for you, I want you to understand what else is out there in terms of sports psychology. Well, after you have your doctorate in sports psychologist, who may also have a counseling certification or a certified counselor, clinical psychologist, whatever it is, they can be both. But after you have that doctoral level, the next level down in competency and studies is a master's level in psychology, or in sports psychology specifically. In that, your professionals in that field will usually be striving for and trying to achieve, if they've not already achieved, what's called a CMPC, what I was mentioning before, a certified mental performance consultant. To be qualified as the certified mental performance consultant, you must have either a master's or doctorate in sports psychology. You must have hundreds of hours working with clients, 100+ hours of working with a mentor, someone who's been in the field longer than you have. And then you must, on top of passing your college exams, be it doctoral or master's, you'll also have an exam for the certification to test like, hey, did you do the thing? For those of you in the strength and conditioning world, it's very similar to the idea of the CSCS. However, the CSCS does not even require X amount of contact hours or work with professionals or work under a mentor. You can just take it. At the CMPC level, you have to work with someone who's been in the field. You can't just do the course material, take the exam. So it does have an even higher level of kind of gatekeepership, you could call it, than in the strength and conditioning world. Now, there are students such as myself who have yet to achieve their CMPC for numerous reasons. A, it's an expensive exam, and to be in the field, it usually doesn't give you a lot of money up front, so it takes you a while to earn the right just to pay for the exam. B, you come from a program that was focused more on research-based, so maybe you didn't get as much work with clients yet. Or C, you come from a program that has so many people in it that the people who are qualified mentors don't get to work with everybody, so they're still trying to catch up on those hours, or a combination of the three. That does not mean the person who is training to be CMPC certified is that much different than the person who is CMPC. Sometimes it just means they haven't had some of the opportunities to do the things that the person who has the CMPC has. So it's still good to kind of talk with the person you might be looking at. All right, so you're talking to somebody and you're looking for that sports psychology component. Talk to them, they don't got their doctorate. They don't have a CMPC. Talk to them, they have no idea what a CMPC is. All right, that should be their first red flag. If they don't even know what the certification is within the field of sports psychology and you're looking at someone to teach you sports psychology, have some red flags on it. Now, that doesn't mean that the person still can't be useful for you. There is international federations for life coaching and other things like that that do produce some quality individuals. But if you actually look at a lot of life coach certification organizations, they don't have a sports psychology course. They usually have things that are similar to it that might apply to it, but does not ask the person who is taking the certification to work directly with sport, to work directly with performers. So a lot of times what happens is the individuals who are life coaches or similar to that are working with athletes, are former athletes themselves, are relying on combining what they learned in this other certification with their athletic experience. Some of these individuals are very good at that. They are extremely good at working with teams and just have this knack for doing those things. They've put a lot of work to get there. And if they come, highly recommend it. If they can show you this is the science, this is the reasons we're doing things, they're still quality. I have no hate against them. My issue, and the thing that you should have issue with, is someone who thinks, oh, I took this one course, I've been an athlete once, I know what it means to work with sports psychology. That does not mean you know sports psychology just because you were an athlete once. Look around your team, look around at your teammates, look around the gym, whatever you are, and ask how many people are the exact same as you. Unless you have an identical twin that's lived the exact life you have, has the exact same brain, there's no one exactly like you. If the professional you're working with just wants to take their experience, sprinkle in a little bit of training, and say, this is how you should do it because this is what worked for me. That's not how it works. And this is someone who's trying to fleece you for money. This is someone who does not have the best interest in the world for you. The other thing that happens a lot of times with other certifications, whether it is life coaching, which is one of the better ones, or people who have some training as, a lot of times you'll see mindset coaches or resilience trainers. They might have some certification from God knows where, but one thing that they usually don't have, or don't have to the same degree as doctoral level psychologists or master's level CMPCs or CMPCs in training, is that they don't have the same amount of ethics consideration. To be a CMPC and to pass any doctoral or master's program, you're going to take multiple courses on ethics of sports psychology, of the ethics behind doing what you're doing. And most of these other things, they have training and continuing education on the field so that they must learn things. And most of them have some kind of ethics component in at least the initial course. But very few require that you take continuing education on ethics to how to work with a client ethically, how to promote yourself ethically. For most CMPCs you'll ever talk to, or CMPCs in training, if they do not have a doctorate, they will generally avoid the term psychologist as much as possible. As people try to label them psychologists, we are very well taught, do not call me a psychologist because I am not that, because it is unethical to claim that is what you are in the US, because we cannot claim that. I've seen a lot of other resilience trainers and all that skirt that line very closely. Like, they won't promote themselves as that, but when someone calls them that, they're not quick to deny it. And that's dangerous when you're trying to muddy the water and make people think you're something you're not. After you have those people with different certifications, you have your next layer of just people out there with experience that are calling themselves things, and it's all BS. Going back to mindset coaches, resilience trainers, a lot of these terms are not as protected as CMPC or psychologists. So you'll see random people on Instagram calling themselves a mindset coach, health coach, life coach, whatever it is, and they've done nothing to earn that title. They just call themselves that. Steal some content off Instagram or TikTok and say, like, I know things, and they don't know shite. They don't know any of what they're really talking about, and they're just trying to take their experience, and sometimes with good intentions, but most of the time that good intention doesn't get anywhere. It just leads you to crap. It leads you in needing to work with somebody else to dig you out of whatever crap they put you in. All right. So once you've gone through that whole experience, you kind of figure out what their qualifications are. How do you determine who you're going to work with? Because as I said, There are some sports psychologists who are complete charlatans who got their degree, created their own thing, and are just BSing their way through life. Like they kind of know what they're doing, but really are just resting on the laurels of their degree and really can't be trusted. Meanwhile, there's some people without the degrees that have these other certifications that have proven themselves to be very creative, to be very competent at what they do. So the question becomes, how do you find the right person? Well, the first piece to that is obviously what do you need? If you're looking for mental health, you have to find someone who is counseling certified, clinically certified, something along those routes. Talk to them on that. Like, nobody that I listed after psychologists, no health coach, life coach, resilience trainer, CMPC who does not have a counseling certification or clinical psych work in addition to their CMPC. If all they have is CMPC, they're not qualified to be a mental health coach. If they just have life coaching, they're not qualified to do you with mental health. Resilience trainer, mindset coach, none of these people are qualified for mental health if that is all they have. Now, there are some counselors that have these things. Great. They can hit the whole thing. But if you don't need clinical help and you're looking for something else, such as sport anxiety, dealing with pressure, if you're a coach, dealing with team culture, team communication, things along those lines that are very specific to your field. If you're looking for how to make my athletes just like being at practice more, how do I want my employees to just be at work happier? That's something that you start looking at somebody in these performance fields for. So that's the first step. This is who you're going to work with, and they're going to work with you on things such as communication, culture, mindfulness, self-talk, confidence, motivation, on and on, things along those routes. And sometimes, like if you do mindfulness and self-talk, goal setting, some of that might help some clinical issues, but that's not what they're designed for, and that's not what they specialize in. So just take that with a grain of salt, that sometimes you might get some added benefit, but don't plan on that being your professional. All right, so you've decided, yep, I am a athlete. I have issues with motivation and confidence when I'm, in a game. Or I'm a coach looking to reset my team's culture and make it one that's more positive and appealing to young individuals that does not feel as segmented and separated. How do you sort through the weeds and the dog water to find someone who actually can help you and does not just rip you off? Well, I usually look at a couple questions. The first one is, what credentials or what kind of training have you had? And going back to our list before, if they have a psychology master's or doctorate, it's a good start. If that master's or doctorate is centered in sports psychology, that's even better, because there are some psychologists out there who think they can do sports psychology just from general psychology degree, and that's not always true. Just being an athlete or just working with it does not mean you're qualified to work in sport, because sport's a very unique world. All right, so then you talk to them like they don't have a master's, they don't have a doctorate, they don't have a CMPC in this. All right, what do you got then? They list off these other things like, okay, you've got that. Like, how long have you been doing this? What's some examples of things that so you've asked them what certifications they have, what kind of experience they might have done. What's the next thing that I like to ask him? Next thing is, how do you create your plan? Like, this is our first time working together. I want to work on motivation, or I want to work on team culture. what does a session with you look like? And how do you design that session? A higher level and more competent professional should give you some type of answer along the lines of, it's very individually defined. I base it off of observation I might do with you, some surveys we might take to kind of measure psychological aspects. I'll mix in a little bit of what you're talking about, what you're looking at, and decide what might be best combination. At the end of the day, the two things you want to look at when they're telling you how they define their plan are, is there a scientific piece to it, and there's experience based to it. Because those two pieces, the art and the science, are what creates a more holistic and better plan. Because someone who just relies on experience is putting themselves in a spot where they're just kind of making things up on the fly. They're just hoping what worked for them or worked for somebody else they worked with should work for you. Someone who fully relies on science is looking at collective averages and wholes, and usually gets very stuck in the idea of, this is what the science says, this is what I have to do. However, when you combine the two pieces, you get the person who relies and bases things off science, but realizes based on experience, not everything's going to look perfect as it does in an experiment. So they're going to adapt to that. So when you're looking at how do they make the plan, there should be collaboration with you, the client or coach, and there should be a combination of science and practice to make this plan. The next thing I'd ask is, how many sessions are we going to need, or how long does this generally take? Well, that answer will usually vary client to client, but there's a few key things that I look for. Is A, they should never promise, oh, this will only take 3 weeks, or this will only take one session, because things happen. I will tell you right now, there is no 4-week guaranteed promise to confidence, because things are going to happen in your life or in your team's lives where 4 weeks might not be enough. So if there is ever a guarantee, if it will only take this, or they promise they'll only take this money back guarantee, it's a red flag for me. If they say, oh, we can do this in one session, we'll get our one quick fix. There are no quick fixes in psychology. Just like in strength conditioning or in coaching, it takes you multiple weeks to build the skill of running, the skill of lifting, the skill of jumping, shooting, whatever it might be. Building mental skills are the same thing. It takes continuous practice. It takes weeks and lifetimes. It'll take you beyond just working with them, and they should be clear, like, hey, we're going to start here, but you have to do practice on your own to really get the benefit of it. So if they're telling you, we'll get this done in one session, they are a dog water professional. Now, you might have restrictions of like, hey, my championship is in 2 weeks. All I got is a week or 1 or 2 sessions that we can do. You might have some limitations, but they should be able to tell you like, all right, I will do my best. If you work with me, we will get what we can out of 1 or 2 sessions, but understand that might not get the full effect of what you're looking for, but we will do our best to help you. That is, I think, a very valid answer. Now, if they give you an idea of there really is no time frame to any of this, if they're just very open, I'm not necessarily putting a red flag, but it's yellow flag to me. It's making me wonder, like, do they have a plan of ever getting me out of service? Like a good psychologist, good CMPC, good person within the field of psychology, we're always trying to work ourselves out of a job. I want to work with a client in as many effective sessions as they need, but in as few as I can as well. So like, I'd rather get 8 really good sessions with someone than 12 shisty sessions. Like, even though I get paid more for 12, I'd rather get 8 good ones and not drag you along. I want you to do things without me. I want you to move beyond me at some point, but also understanding like, you don't know. So what's a good answer to that question, how long? I usually say is, based on your case, it can be very individual and all that. I could tell you From my experience, a lot of people will usually do about 4 to 8 sessions to at least get an idea of where they're at, and some end up coming to see me for a lot longer. Some go 14 to 20. Some are only ever able to commit for 3 or 4 weeks. But just like it takes you months to build muscle, it's going to take you weeks, months to build brain muscle, to build that brain strength to you. So just be ready to be in this for the long haul. But I am going to try to get you out of here sooner than later. I'm never going to drag you along. Those are kind of things I'll tell my clients a lot of times. And then finally, you always have to look at the cost and then weigh that against all the other answers. There might be an extremely proficient, competent, doctoral level person, but if their cost is something that your organization, that you as an individual can't realistically afford, then you got to take a step down. And now, if you're looking at the cost and you're looking at a person with some certification you're kind of questioning or wondering about, and their cost the $200-300 that the psychologist is charging, take the psychologist. Just be honest with yourself there. Now, other factors that might come into play in this is time of the year. So going back to our, we got a championship in 2 weeks. As much as I'm going to say, hey, come work with me, I will do what I can for your team or you in 2 weeks. Sometimes that might not be the right thing because I'm going to come with a full plan and have ideas of what to do. Sometimes you might just be like, all our team's got is 2 weeks. I'm going to bring in the motivational speaker, pay the couple $100, hope that speech gives it right, and that's fine. Now, that motivational speaker in the beginning of the year during the preseason, that whatever they talk about, it's not going to carry over for everyone all the way through the entire season. I would definitely start with your CMPC, your sports psychologists in the preseason, because they're the ones that are going to outline like, all right, you have a 12-week season. This is what a 12-week plan looks like. If you're not able to commit to me for 12 weeks for your season, here's 3 weeks for your preseason or early season. And they're going to give you examples of what they can do in that time frame and what the hopeful results are going to be. The last thing you got to consider is availability. Psychology as a field is growing. Sports psychology is growing. There's more people in it. There's higher demands for a lot of it. But the honest truth is, if I lived in a world where everybody I think who needs my services asks for my services, I would not be able to help everybody. There is not enough people in the field to help everybody that needs help. Just we're still at a point where not everybody is going out and looking for that help. And there's not CNPCs or not sports psychologists in every town available to every person. So sometimes you have to go to these other certifications and hope that you've done enough research on them that they are qualified to do what they do. That's a little bit about sports psychology and how to find the person that might be right for you. And now it's up to you. Do your research, talk to different people. Don't just go on the one person you heard about, see what else is out there. So till next time, give us a follow here if you like the content. If you don't, hopefully it's going to improve and you'll like something next time, learn something around here. Thank you again for watching. If there's anything I said that particularly offended you, I hope you can forgive me for that. And if you leave any comments or say anything that offends or hurts me, just know I'm going to forgive you for it. So have a good one. Go be your best self today.